Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Swamp Thing as well as the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like always, when we're talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when to start talking about each of your respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Swamp Thing, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Swamp Thing. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do immediately like that it does show us that obviously it's not like Alec isn't even in there anymore. He still has his humanity. I did like that. Like, obviously it seemed like, oh, he's there as a human and he's interacting with the dude he killed last episode, and now it's like, whoa, he's feeling guilty about it. And it's because his humanity is still there. Like, oh yeah, like, and I like that too, because it's not like he just got over it. It's like, no, like, no matter what form he's in, he literally just killed someone and it's weighing on him. And then it seems like obviously he's getting brought back. It's like all these bugs crawling over the body, and it seems like the body gets reanimated. And it looks like it kills someone else later on. Like, it makes you wonder, the hunter that was out there, did he get turned into one as well, or did he just get like the flesh eaten from his body, or like what that whole thing is? It's interesting because it seems like whatever that is, it seems like that's separate from whatever Alec's whole situation is now. It's kind of interesting because obviously Abby kind of finds out, being like, okay, so she ends up telling Liz about everything, and Liz is kind of digesting it, and I think it speaks volumes that Liz doesn't immediately shoot her down about oh, you're crazy. It's like, no, she just kind of accepts, and it's like, okay, so maybe there's something going on here. Like, what are you going to do about it? Well, because things aren't looking good in the hospital, because like there's no progress being made. So some higher ups from the CDC in particular, it seems like it's Harlan and Abby's boss, I'm assuming, has come down to kind of try and handle things their way. Harlan ends up being sick. I meant to bring this up before, but I figure I might as well bring it up now. The actor who plays Harlan, I've seen him in a couple things. Isn't that the actor from the movie Disturbia, Shia LaBeouf's best friend? What is? I'm trying to remember, is the actor's name Aaron or is the character's name Aaron? I want to say the actor's real name is Aaron. I can't. I'm blanking. I don't remember. I got to pay more attention when it comes to like the opening credits and the end credits. But whatever the case may be, that I feel like Disturbia, it might be what I'm recognizing him from. Maybe that was like. Damn, that movie came out like 2008 or 7, didn't it? So it was like 11 or 12 years ago. Either way, I'm going on a huge tangent, so I do apologize. But his condition is getting worse, and Abby's just trying to find out what's going on and how she can help with this whole situation. She wants to go to Alec's place because it's like, okay, I can find out his research and stuff to learn about what's going on. What's also interesting is she has a first interaction with Jason Woodrow, and he's kind of an oddball because, like, obviously it's almost that type of we kind of saw it last episode where he's kind of got his level of intelligence, like, oh, like these people, oh, like I gotta talk to these idiots, they won't know anything, because obviously he's testing what Abby knows. But now we also see where he comes from in the sense of like, Abby comes at this from an emotional standpoint of like, this person here is Eddie. He was a father that died, and now his daughter has to grow up all alone. But then like you have Jason being like, you're too emotional in this. Like, look at this as kind of the spectacle it is. The fact that it matters. Look at the situation. Plants are up 1, humanity 0. He's looking at this purely from a scientific point of view. Like, he's just fascinated by everything that's going down. It's interesting to find out, though, it does seem like where his motivations lie in all this potentially. Well, because his wife, Caroline, it seems like she's suffering from memory issues. Maybe it's like a onset, like early Alzheimer's or dementia type of situation, because she's forgetting and she's like, I'm losing my mind. And so for him, it's like, maybe this is a means of like getting the money needed to pay off some treatments and stuff, working with all this stuff. Or maybe his accelerant is part of that too, of like potentially like helping her with her situation. So that's just like nice little details to kind of get, to kind of learn about their situation. What I thought was also fascinating was when, Abby's in Alec's lab, but then like all those bugs start attacking and the dude that's dead. He was looking for particularly Alec, but the question I had was like, was that him actually looking for it? Like the dead guy, like his conscious, was he looking for it? Or was that the bugs looking for Alec and he's just like the vessel that they're doing it from? It seems like it's more so it was the dude looking for Alec, because obviously it's like, oh, you murdered me, and he's almost kind of on some like vengeful spirit type of thing, and he was kind of being driven. Like, I guess like the bugs acted as like some magical binding that kind of contained his soul and kept him here. So he was more so a vengeful spirit, which seems like that might be what Shauna's whole thing is. Well, we'll get to that soon enough. But I thought that was kind of interesting. But Alec was able to talk to the bugs or whatever, and he was like, release him, and they did. The body fell apart, and it seems like his soul kind of moved on. So the question, like going back to what I said, is this 100, like, are these two separate things? Like, we know that there's something in Murray, in this swamp, that isn't like anywhere else. So once again, kind of on that more supernatural side of things, is this like the supernatural and the plant? Like, because it seems like Alec was chosen as the guardian of the swamp and everything, the plants. But what about the bugs and stuff like that? Is that something else entirely different? Like, are they kind of becoming as like conscious and aware as like the plants and the swamp is? Or is there something more supernatural they're tapping into? Like, what that is, I don't know. Abby kind of talks to Alec as like, oh, as Alec, and he goes, Abby, and he's like, what am I? What happened to me? Because he doesn't remember everything. He remembers the fire. He's like, I was burning, but what am I? And she's like, you're a good man. She's like, we're going to figure this out and kind of get you back to being who you were. So it's like, oh, that's, pretty nice to see. That's where this is going to try and like get him back to being human again. But obviously with his story and character, I'd assume that's not possible. Maybe there is a way. We'll have to see, but I'm highly doubting it. But that was such an interesting thing. It's also, too, like, it definitely does seem like it's not just going to be potentially regular humans that Swamp Thing is going to come across, because that's just interesting, because it almost seemed like a monster, because it's like monster versus monster. It's almost like, the best thing I could compare it to, it's just kind of like almost, I guess, an almost like Alien versus Predator moment, or like Freddy versus Jason, like one of those moments of like, whoa, this is happening. Once again, does not feel like this is a superhero show. Feels like you're watching more so a monster TV show. It's kind of interesting just aesthetically, just how they are going about it. But Abby seems like she is the only one that knows about this now. There's other complicated situations all around, like obviously Alec, getting it from his mom about the fact is that how everything went down in the swamp. But it's like, yeah, they found that dude, obviously with the dude who had the hook in his face the last episode, found his body. So it's like more dead people are showing up, and it's like, for her, it's like, oh, this wouldn't have happened, if you hadn't been so reckless. And the only reason we were like that is because of Abby. But then Matt has to remind her, if it wasn't for Abby, we wouldn't have found Susie, and the story probably would not have had the happy ending that it's having. But we also found out that Avery and the sheriff had a thing, and it seems like it's a continuous thing until the sheriff is like, whoa, wait. Your wife is here? She's like, no, I'm not doing this. Because obviously, the sheriff is there asking Avery about Alec. Obviously, Avery's trying to cover his ass about this whole situation. What's interesting, though, is with the way things kind of play out later on in the episode, it makes me wonder, the dude that fired those shots and killed Alec, was that Avery himself? He doesn't seem like the type of dude that would, get other people to do his dirty work. But then again, maybe that wasn't him. I'd assume so, just because he handles his own dirty work later on. But I also think maybe he wouldn't have the money necessary to do something like that. That's what I'm chalking it up to. Well, to be frank, he's paying people to go out there and dump that serum and stuff, place it in certain parts of the swamp. So obviously he's got some money. Actually, turns out he's actually in debt, because he's basically been like taking loans from Gordon Haas. But then like Gordon's like, yeah, you're gonna have to pay that back, and so that turns into a whole thing. And because Gordon did that, he has a pleasure of getting his head caved in by a golf club. That was brutal, because Gordon was going to run his mouth off about like the loan and some concave that Avery's a part of or whatever. but puts him in the tub and everything. It's like, oh, what's happening? It's like, oh, it's easier to clean up this mess, and proceeds to kill him with the golf club. Shows you how dangerous Avery is, because it's for him, it's like, oh, you try to embarrass me in front of my wife? What was it, like, you measly motherfucker or something like that? I love just that it's the way it's said, especially with that southern twang. I don't know, I like that. Motherfucker sounds so nice with a southern twang for whatever reason. I don't know. Luckily for Liz, she didn't open the door, because Avery would have probably killed her too. To be fair, her showing up there wanting to talk to Gordon and stuff like that probably puts her on his list, so hopefully she'll be able to watch her back. She is a reporter, so I'm sure that's going to cause some issues, but I think we're going to see Avery pop up around and Liz being like, oh, probably trying to find out how much Gordon told her and whether or not she needs to be, quote unquote, taken care of type of situation. We'll see what ends up being that case, but I'm wondering what about all this caught Liz's attention about Gordon, like what led to him and all of this stuff, And since we're on the subject of Avery and everything, let's talk about Maria. Obviously still seeing Shauna's ghost, and obviously Shauna is there kind of tormenting her, being like, oh, the fact of the matter is, Dad, you think he loves you? The fact of the matter is that, oh, you thought he'd be faithful all this time, like saying stuff to kind of, it makes me wonder, is Shauna trying to warp her? Like, is it a situation of, obviously, once again, are we dealing with the supernatural side of things? Is she just a pure evil spirit? Because is it that type of thing of, like, something's manipulating her into being an evil spirit? Is it just something manifesting itself that looked like Shauna, but it's an evil spirit? Or is it a situation of, because she's been here so long, she's become an evil spirit, she's gotten a little twisted, and, unfinished business type of situation, but maybe she's trying to twist her mom, because it seems more like a pushing her in the right direction. Is it like, it seems like the cause her pain, but also the kind of like, is it supposed to be the type of thing of, is it going to be like a Shining type of situation or whatever, where it's like, oh, kind of drive you crazy until like, oh, you kill Dad or Dad ends up killing you, or you both kill each other, that type of thing? I don't know. Because Maria kind of ends up bringing up some interesting stuff. Like, for one, it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm not being a different person. This is who I was originally. I've actually been faking it, like, who I've, been for the past 14 years. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But then also, like, Marie kind of acting upon those suspicions that Ghost Shauna is bringing up to her. And it's like, obviously, like, it seems like Avery's run dry in the money department. He's kind of into debt and everything. But Maria, she's the one that, I guess, like, her family comes from money, Avery's doesn't. His side of the family, at the very least. So any money they've been using, like, to pay Woodrow and just kind of handle things, it's been coming from her side of things. But she doesn't want to help him anymore because, the whole Shauna thing is shifting her perspective. She's not kind of like the agreeable wife anymore. She's like, no, like, I'm not going to just go with the flow. I'm not going to be kind of pushed to do what you want to. You want to do this with it, money, whatever, that's your position to be in, but this is my money. I'm going to handle it my own way. So that's interesting. Once again, with all this spooky ghost stuff, is the Swamp of Moray on some ley line or something? Like, what's up? All these ghosts, dude. It's crazy. Because once again, it's like, Abby saw Shauna, but that might have just been a dream situation because she didn't look the same. She did before, but now it seems like she's got more of a ghostly feel going on. So it's like, what is that? We'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. Another element to this is, oh yeah, I'd actually forgotten to talk about it earlier too, the whole situation of like, oh yeah, like they were able to fight back the infections, that the disease that's spreading, because they stopped fighting it, because the antibiotics were just making it fight back, because that's what this was all about. Like, this wasn't because the whole situation, it's not nature fighting, it's nature fighting back. And that kind of gave Abby the idea of like, oh, rather than treating them with antibiotics, let's kind of pull back from that. And it seems like what she has planned is working. Also, it is set up that where it's kind of like, oh, Alex's accident wasn't an accident because, parts of his boat were found and there's bullet holes. So that doesn't look good. That looks very suspicious. And that's going to bring things up to be like, oh, what happened to him wasn't an accident. To be fair, Abby's the only one that knows that he's still alive, just not necessarily himself. It's sad, too, because he had to watch as Abby and Matt danced, for him it's like, oh, like, probably, it's a whole conversation that Susie had brought up of like, oh, he's scared because he doesn't know what's going on. He's all alone. Sadly, Susie's like, I'm all alone too. I guess we're both like that. But, luckily they both have Abby in their corner kind of backing both of them up, so. And then finally, there's also that whole Xanadu situation. What that is exactly, I have no idea. Stuff of like, well, Daniel's an actor and stuff like that, sure, but like, is there a specific reason why he's been in Murray for the past 8 years? And it's like he wants Xanadu to read his cards, but for the past 8 years they've been the exact same, but now they've changed. Whereas like now the cards are in the reverse order they originally were. What that means, who knows? Maybe because it's like, oh, maybe this has something to do with Abby. She's back in town, but then Xanadu is like, Abby, and it's like, huh. So what part does Abby have to play in everything that's going down in town? We'll ultimately have to wait and see. I'm very interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. And now moving on to this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start with everything in space. Obviously, I love you have Enoch being so emo and depressed and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, when you talking about Fitz isn't your only friend, because it's like, oh, I lost my one and only best friend. And like, oh, Fitz isn't your only friend. Yeah, you saved us in the future. Like, if you hadn't sacrificed yourself, we would have never returned to the past to be able to save Earth from that worldwide extinction. And it's like, yeah, we couldn't have done it without you, friend. And so it turns out this is also about, obviously, the Chronicons. One in particular, what was it? Adara, which it seems that Adara and Enoch have a past. I even love it, like, oh, what was that whole conversation they have? I can't believe I let you get, like, inserted into my data board or something like that. I'm like, oh, alien sex talk. I mean, not necessarily sex talk, but it's just interesting. And because they're like the beings that they are, they're so like dry and matter of fact with their delivery, and it just makes even the sex talk weird to hear. But nevertheless, this is interesting because obviously this is all about some tear in the fabric got worse, and it basically ended up destroying their planet. They're the last of their kind, and to save their planet, they need to find out how time travel works. The only person smart enough to do that is Fitz, but Fitz is only able to do that if he has the right motivation, and that right motivation would be Gemma, which Enoch points that out. It's like, oh, she needs to be in danger, which to him, like his logic, you can understand it, because for him it's like, oh, this way I can help my best friend out by getting him back with the woman he loves. Obviously this way you're together and happy, but at the same time it's also about saving his people too. He's in this complicated situation because it's obviously he's acting as a chronicom of like, okay, like I gotta do what's best for my people, but at the same time it's like I gotta look out for my best friend. So he's kind of driven by both aspects, which it's very human-like of him in certain regards. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's actually kind of sad because Simmons decided to stay behind, because for her it's like, being with Fitz, no matter how things play out, it's better for her, because it's like, I literally dragged you guys all across space looking for Fitz. You guys followed me for a year, and it's like, I won't put your lives in danger anymore. And Daisy's like, no, I'm not leaving here without you. And it's like, yeah, because it's like besties. I love that, because let's not forget they were tripping last episode, and like, I think you're my best friend. I think you're my best friend. It's like, dude, it's so cool. I also love that like Piper's still busting Davis's chops for being high last episode. I even love it. Like, it's like, yeah, if you give him a cup of water or something, he's gonna be a little cranky. And Davis is like cranky, and Piper's like, I think she was basically like, yeah, that was me being a little modest. You're a whiny little bitch. Also love that when Daisy and Simmons showed up to save him, they were opening the thing up. It's like, come on. They were like, oh yeah, we didn't need you to rescue us. Yeah, we're fine. And basically being like, oh, we would have found a way out on our own anyway. But I love that. But it is sad. I mean, it's interesting, because there's a whole thing about what exactly caused that fabric. Because once again, it's like, because is that why they were after Fitz in the first place? Because I was thinking that this, it kind of confused me, because like I was bringing it up, I was like, oh, technically he's dead. Like he, the space time continuum is messed up because of the whole time travel thing. So is that the tears in the fabric of space and time that they caused by changing things? or at the very least doing the whole time travel thing, did that lead to their planet's destruction? Like they as a people were trying to find a way, but the Chronocoms, it seems like they couldn't come up with, like, they didn't take enough action quickly, so it led to their planet being destroyed. So now, also what Enoch has planned, I have no idea. He's like, do know that no matter what ends up happening, you are my friend. So it's like, is it more of a situation of kind of forcing their hands? Like, is it going to be a situation of like, oh yeah, both of you are going to be together, but he's going to force Fitz his hand, maybe like implant him with like a bomb or something, and it's like, okay, well, not necessarily him, but maybe they're people, and that kind of motivates both Fitz and Simmons to do this, or maybe Enoch's got a plan of his own. I have no idea. Whatever it is, like, I guess for him, it's like he's sacrificed for this group before. Obviously, he's going to sacrifice for his best friend as well as these, other people who are friends of his. Like, I think maybe that's what he's got planned. We'll kind of have to wait and see what exactly he has in store. Obviously, back on Earth, May and Sarge spend some time together. We get cut back and forth between like present day and May spending time with Coulson. Once again, I talk about it all the time. It's so weird when you see May extremely happy. Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's just like early days. I mean, it's not even just early days. Like, May, most times, she'll have a smirk and everything, but to see her as happy as she was with Coulson and big smiles and everything, it's still so weird. I feel so weird because, like, I see Ming-Na Wen, the actress who plays, May. I see her with big smiles. It's just because May is such a stoic character, and this is the character I always associate with Ming-Na Wen a lot. So that's why it's so weird to see her like laid back and just having so much fun, because like the character is so stoic. She'll crack a smile and stuff like that, but she never is that, like, you never see that true happiness like she is when she was with Coulson. And I like what they did, because obviously it seems like there's something there where it's like every time she keeps like, it kind of slips back and forth between present day and her being like, wait, what? Dreaming of that time she was with Coulson. So it's like, at first it seemed like it was just because she was high on like whatever like thing they kind of dosed her with to kind of keep her docile. But also it's like certain things he would say, Sarge would say, kind of reminisce her of thinking like, wait, that's something Coulson would say. It's like, wait, what did you just say? So it's like, there's got to be something there. And because of that and a combination of Benson, we kind of learned a lot more about what this whole situation is about. They're about the creatures, the alien creatures that we discovered last episode are called Shriek. Basically, they come from another world. They find a host and they implant themselves in it. Basically, using the human body energy. Like, basically, they go berserk once the human body is dead. That's why when they just shot the dude, he came back kind of almost like a zombie and started attacking May. May started breaking every bone in his body, but it seems like once they're in control of your body, no matter how badly broken your body is, probably as long as there's still some brain function to a certain extent, they can still move. Like maybe, as long as there's energy generated from the body, they can feed off of it, I guess, even after death. But death is like, I guess, they need you alive to kind of constantly pump them full of energy, but the moment you die, like, that energy stops and they just kind of go haywire. But then, like, when they're nearing their end and they gathered enough energy, hence like the stones that come out of them and stuff. Like, I thought their thing, like, because obviously Yo-Yo's like, oh, I've seen this before. I thought she was, in particular, I was like, is that supposed to, I thought what she was potentially going to start referencing was like, is it supposed to be reminiscent of, when Inhumans go through their metamorphosis, like, kind of like going to their cocoons, making the caterpillar and butterfly reference. I mean, as a, an analogy. I thought that's what they were going for, but it's like, no, the monoliths are what they're going for. Which is so interesting. One space, one time, and one they hadn't figured out. I'm like, I didn't remember that. I didn't remember there's another one that they have no idea what it does. That's really interesting. Maybe that's going to play a part. The fact is they make such a point to reference it. But, it's interesting because now it puts in perspective of like these guys aren't world destroyers, they're kind of world savers. But beyond that, we still don't 100%. Well, it seems like they come from different worlds in themselves, but it's like, are they some like groups who lost their own worlds to these things, so they're trying to track them down and get revenge? Is that's what this all about? Is it just them? Has it always just been them? Have they lost people along the way? It kind of seems like, but I guess like along the way they also recruit people. Like if May's capable enough, it's like, of course we do recruit you because you're a badass and everything, But these things are fascinating, like, because it seems like they also take orders from somebody, like, because that's what this is all about. They're tracking down their leader. But, you know, kind of going back to what I was bringing up before, I figured that's what it was, that they weren't destroying worlds. They were escaping worlds that were getting destroyed. It's like, we try to do what we could, but the Shriek, we try to take them out. But the fact is, it's too late. We got to make a move and get out of this planet. So I'm curious who this leader is and for what purpose. Is it the purpose of just mass destruction? Are they even trying to collect worlds? Are they just trying to destroy worlds? Are we going to clash with a real world destroyer this season or not? You know, will they kind of get more, you know, have the more adapt, you know, titling of world destroyer? We'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. I did like how May messed with Snow's head a little bit by being like, oh yeah, everyone's got a role in everything except for you, except for, you know, being nuts. It's like, hell, even your boss is like, oh yeah, saying that you're a little unhinged, using that just to kind of mess with her. But she's like, oh, I could free your mind and stuff like that. Snow sounds like such a hippie in certain regards, but I guess for her it's like, oh, you don't even really know what you don't know. Basically turning her into a butterfly will kind of like unlock her mind, and you're like, oh, you kind of, I guess, kind of be one with the universe and kind of unlock all of its secrets. That's not what May's intrigued in. She's intrigued in killing Sarge. She was like, I told you I was going to kill you and I was going to make it hurt. Having their little close quarters combat fight. And I love him being like, oh, I thought you know, you're in love with this face. And in that moment, May proceeds to punch and beat on him like multiple times, like kicking his ass. It's interesting, and it's still got to be a little hard because even while she's doing it, like, she's still thinking of Coulson and everything. So it's like, yeah, even though you know it's not Coulson, it still doesn't make it any easier to beat up some dude that has his face. And there's still that sympathetic side of her that's, even though she knows that's not Coulson. Because the fact is, he talks about the fact is that, you know, because he's like, don't you think it's a little interesting that the fact is I happen to land on a world where someone else has my face? So it's like, what was he? And it's like, Coulson was a person. It's like, no, he had to be, what was he? It's like, no, he was a good, decent person. He's everything that you're not. Because the fact is, it's like, you should be asking the question yourself, because I was about to say that too when he's bringing up all that stuff. Like, if it was anyone else, you could make the argument, oh, okay, they don't know Coulson as well, but it's like, May and Coulson go way back. For her, it's like, I know about who his parents are, I saw pictures of him when he was a kid and growing up. The fact is, I know how he lived, I know how he died. Like, May and Coulson have been through a lot, like, you know. Was that last season, or was that like season 3? We saw them like over a decade ago, like when they were kind of in their younger day, like kind of still early on with the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. situation. I can't remember what season that was. I want to say that might have been it had to be like season 4, if I remember correctly, because it definitely wasn't season 5. At least I don't think it was. Maybe it was. It might have had something to do with the LMD, so I want to say it was season 4. Could be wrong. Either way, I'm going on a huge tangent, so I do apologize. But that does beg the question, like, well, then who is Sarge? Why does he look the way he does? Is it just a coincidence? Which, you know, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Obviously, like, it's got to be a major plot reason why that is, but also just kind of like, stuff like that doesn't just happen in the universe. Like, there's no happenstance with that. Like, there has to be, like, some reason behind that. But for him, it's like, it's not even, because it's like, he talks about the fact, because like, I think even like May was kind of getting to it, like, maybe you are Coulson, but to be fair, she knows she was there when Coulson died. So but for her, it's like, he's like, basically, I've been to different planets, some planets moving at the speed of light. I've been alive 100 of your years, and I will be alive 100 more after you're gone, just because that's just how their whole situation works. What they are specifically, species-wise, I don't know. Also, this takes away the whole from a different dimension situation. It's straight up, they are from different planets, so that's interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense too in a really grand scheme of the MCU, because like potentially, like, you know, aside from the sequels, the thought process is that going forward with the MCU, probably going in the more cosmic realms. I mean, we've tiptoed in that direction in many different regards, whether it's about the Asgardians and Guardians of the Galaxy, borderlining on Doctor Strange, that's still kind of on Earth, but we're dealing with alternate dimensions and stuff like that. Captain Marvel, that's all the more cosmic side of things, but nevertheless. So it kind of makes sense if we're kind of, you know, tiptoeing that way, you know, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too, even though the show is obviously going on a different path than the movie continuity and stuff like that. Regardless, you get the point I'm trying to make. So while all that's happening, we have some drama at the lighthouse where Mac, is trying to comfort Yo-Yo after, losing Keller, but obviously it puts them in that awkward situation because it's like, you kind of broke things off with me, but for Mac it's like, well, I had to, because like for him, he was too afraid of not living up to Coulson's legacy, and it's like the job kind of had to be his everything because he wanted to make sure he did the right thing because too many people's lives counted on him. So I needed to be focused and on top of my job. But now you can obviously see that as a way of being like, oh, does that mean I would have been a distraction? Would have kind of pulled you away from your job or something? It's like, no, I would have, been there to support you. I wouldn't have held you back or anything like that. Because now Yo-Yo's kind of trying to keep it keep it very platonic and being like, okay, our work environment, like any order you give me, I do it without question. The fact of the matter is there something you want me to do? And he doesn't say anything. It's just like, I figured as much, It's like not saying what needs to be said. Because even Keller said it. It's like, Max still is in love with you. It's like, I figured I should let you know that because it's only fair, that you kind of know where everything kind of stands. Like, and the fact is, Max not willing to say it because, I think he's just scared because also it's like, too much is riding on the line. So it's like, I got to put my own feelings aside and everything to get this job done, What he's most worried about is getting people killed because it's like he doesn't want people to put so much trust in him and just for him to fail, So that's why he's like, I gotta succeed, I gotta win. Obviously, this is hard for Yo-Yo, the whole Keller situation. It's actually kind of interesting because her and Benson kind of bond in this episode because Benson was kind of in a similar situation to Yo-Yo. Like, she ended up having to kill Keller because it's like it was the right thing to do. But I like what she said of like, she's done the right thing in the past. It still doesn't make it feel any less like it's wrong. Obviously, I'm sure she's referencing like because she got to look down at her hand, so I think she was referencing the Ruby situation. I think I could be wrong of like, oh yeah, killing her. So at least that's what I'm assuming, but because I think that's the one thing she's done in the past that she kind of regrets the most. I mean, obviously it caused big issues between her and Mac, but Benson was in a situation where his husband was in a car accident, brain dead, and do we take him off, life support? And Benson had to fight his husband's family on it, and ultimately the court got pulled, but obviously his family never forgave Benson's husband's family never forgave Benson, but it's like, I know I did the right thing in the end. And it's never, it's kind of interesting because it all kind of fits with the whole Jessica Jones situation because, like, doing the right thing, it's never the easiest thing. Sometimes it's the hardest thing. You wish you could say it would be easy, but it never is, So it's just kind of interesting how that kind of comes full circle in certain regards, just, in the grand scheme of things. So Benson wants to go off to kind of, examine the monoliths more, kind of understand them and what's going on there. Obviously, we have, the crew, obviously Short, a Fitz, and a Simmons. But it's nice to be back on Earth. But obviously, they're going to be back on Earth realizing, like, all right, we got to deal with this whole situation. And obviously, the Shriek, as well as their bosses, also dealing with a guy that looks like Coulson. It isn't Coulson, so that's a whole complicated thing in itself. I wonder because I don't remember the time frame and everything like that. Because obviously, they were kicking it in space for a year, so they were most likely away when Coulson died. Well, because there was a time frame from that all of them were looking for the Fitz in space, but then they came back to obviously keep S.H.I.E.L.D. running through the lighthouse and everything, which I'm also very interested to see, like, hey, Deke and Daisy to be reunited. It's also going to be complicated, too, because you'll be like, oh, where's my grandparents? Wait, they're not here. That's going to be an interesting thing all on its own, but still. Once again, that whole thing of, like, you don't belong in this universe type of thing. Obviously that, the group, Sergeant as people were talking about, because obviously, once again, Deke has that signature because he's from a different time frame. Just like Fitz is kind of an anomaly because he's dead but technically still alive. So, once again, what part that all technically plays into what's going on with the Chromicons and why their planet got destroyed and everything, that kind of fabric space-time thing. I'm very interested to see where ultimately this all ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.